The Gridiron is sponsored by Rothman Orthopedic.
Welcome to The Gridiron, sponsored by Rothman Orthopedics. I'm your host, John Brennan, with the head coach, Chad Brubaker. And one of the most exciting games in Springford history, Springford defeated Perkiomen Valley 40-35 to clinch the division and put themselves in the championship game here this week. Congratulations, Coach.
Well, that's quite the build-up.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Springford history.
Springford has been one of the most exciting games. I mean, like, you've been
great.
coaching, here, Wilson, wherever. Has been one of those exciting games, and probably for you, one of the biggest victories you've had as a coach here at Springford too, right?
Yeah, it was definitely a good win, and it was tough after the last 3 years of them beating us, and so that was important. I had the one thing that I don't think, and maybe I'm pulling the curtain back too much here, is like we really like their coaching staff, and I think there's a mutual respect there.
Sure.
It's not like Buddy Ryan and Jimmy Johnson or anything like that.
Yeah,
That's an old reference.
Maybe they won't.
The
get
young
that
kids
now.
don't know
they
who
won't
that
know who
is.
Buddy Ryan is.
I don't know who.
Right. I got what you're saying. Like, there's rivalries in sports where like the coaching staff and they don't like
just
anything.
dislike
They don't
each
like
other.
anything that they do. You appreciate what
Right.
PV does. PV
Oh, yeah.
appreciates
They
what
do
you
things the right way.
Yeah.
I think that's actually enhances the whole rivalry. Like, I think things fizzle out if somebody dislikes somebody or whatever, and we have a lot of respect for Rob and his staff, and they do things the right way, and we always try to do things the right way. Not that we always do things the right way, but we all make those efforts to try to do things the right way. So, that's pulling back the curtain a little bit.
Right. I think one of the big keys from the game for you, and I'm sure it was a plan going in, it was that you thought you had an opportunity to run the ball, and Armonte had a huge game. Angro had a huge game. He had 2 rushers over 100 yards for you guys. And I'm sure it's something you thought you could do, and you probably wanted to control the tempo, keep it out of their hands a little bit too. So talk about that, aspect of the game.
There was a lot of talk, and people were well aware that we were down 6 starters, 5 starters on defense. And so one of the plans, we have meetings on Sunday, and we tell the offensive staff tells the defensive staff, hey, we're looking for this. Defensive staff is telling the offensive staff, and then I'll make that decision like, okay, this. That was one of the things that we talked about. Hey, the more we can keep them off of the field on offense, the better, because just how many guys we were down. Now, our first drive was only 3 plays, so I don't know if we did a great job of that, but and they had the ball at the end, which we had an opportunity to prevent them from getting the ball back.
Yep.
And that I can tell you, that there were some mistakes that I made in terms of, mistakes is the wrong word. Mistakes is the wrong word. But if I had it to do over again, there were a couple tweaks that I would have made in what we called. But I just want to also say, like I said about the PV staff, our staff did just an unbelievable job, and our kids did an unbelievable job of implementing and trying to execute what we had on both sides of the ball and special teams. And so that was a real group effort, and really, really proud to be a Springford football program member today.
Yeah. So let's talk about the game a little bit. You get off to a really good start. You get up 14-0. And then it starts going a little bit the other way. They get a score, but then you get a score back, and you think it's going to go in the half. You got the momentum 21-7, and then they score basically.
Right.
So now like all that's gone, and PV's going in the locker room saying, "All right, here we are. We're only down 1 score."
And they were getting the ball.
And they're
first.
getting the ball. So talk about I'm sure like there had to been some discussion at halftime, like, guys, it's a half we won right there. Talk about you at halftime with the kids, and what your message was at halftime.
Well, it was an extended halftime because it was homecoming. At halftime, Coach Mick kept apologizing to me, saying, "Yeah, we should have stopped them there. It's my fault." Now, give them some credit. They took 2 huge risks to score, and actually, I thought they scored on the first one, but running the ball there with about 12 seconds left was a huge thing. Now, they had a timeout.
Right.
But, if you run the ball, you always run the risk of, okay, let's say we stop them or the running back trips and now they're down to 7 seconds on the 18, 19, 20-yard line. They could have kicked a field goal or attempted a field goal. But there's a lot of play there. And so, we were in our nickel package thinking they pretty much had to throw, and they were like, you know what, we're going to take a shot here, and ran the ball and got down to the one. Got in the end zone, got down to the one, and then scored. So that was huge. And then so you asked about halftime. At halftime and before the game, we talked about, hey, one play at a time, one
quarter
drive at a time, one quarter at a time. So we essentially won the first quarter. I think, yeah. No, did they score in the first quarter?
I thought it was 14 nothing, I thought.
Either way, so, we won the first half. We just talked about, hey, don't worry about the third quarter. We got to win this first drive.
Okay.
And, our defense had 2 3 and outs in the whole game. First drive of the whole game, first drive of the second half. So that was huge, that getting that stop, because if they go down and score and tie it, it's a different vibe.
Yeah, right. It starts almost kind of looking like it's maybe looked in years in the past.
Right.
Too. So
right.
You get that there. So let's fast forward to the end of the game. Just pure. It's like organized chaos, you would probably say out there. So you got the ball. They force a punt. Now they got the ball with.
There was like 4 minutes left.
4 minutes plus left, and they got to go 70 yards. But they start putting a little drive together out there too. So talk about that last. And I know you're not in the defensive staff, but what are you on the headset saying? What's that conversation between you and the coaching staff that last?
Well, I did go over, and I hardly ever do this, but I did go over switch over to the defensive headset, and I just hear, does so-and-so know he has the back out of the backfield, and does, we're in this, but, I was like, click
off, get off of that,
yeah. They have defensive staffs and offensive staffs have two very different conversations. Offensive staffs are conjecturing, okay, last time we were in this formation, this is what they were in defensively, this is what we should run, and it's all kind of proactive. Defensive staffs are all reactive, like, all right, what are they in? They're empty, they're one back, they're two backs, they have a tight end, they don't have a tight end, we're tight right, tight. Everything is all reactive. And guys, I think it's really hard once you're on one side of the ball or the other side of the ball to switch at some point in your career because of that fact. In fact, I worked previously for a head coach who was a defensive-minded coach, and obviously the head coach, everything should flow through the head coach. So he would actually listen on the offensive headsets. It would be like 3rd and 5, and what I call a pass or a run.
Run. You'd call run.
No, wrong.
You'd call pass.
I would call pass, and he'd be like, no, run the ball. And I'm like, you can't do that to me. You need to tell me when it's second and 8.
Right.
Hey, if we only get 3 or 4 yards here, I don't care. We still want to run the ball on third down. So, it really kind of accentuated that. That's a defensive side. Like, you can't just, I got to get the signal in. I can't change it. No. Now I got to change it. It causes confusion.
Okay.
So.
Last thing here before we start doing some highlights here. We talked about Armonte and Angra having a huge day running. I also think you probably want to talk about your offensive line, because this has been a game they've struggled in the past a little bit picking up, and
true.
You have to give your offensive line. They're kind of like the unsung heroes a little bit of the game too.
We had 3 offensive linemen grade out over 80%, and I don't recall that happening very often. That is especially against a team that runs a 3-3. We really emphasize, and let's face it, we have some smart guys on the offensive line. And we just told them, listen, stay on your path. I think you heard that. We'll talk about that later. Stay on your path. If somebody's not there, someone will show up.
Someone shows up,
because they're not going to give up gaps. And our guys just did that. They did a great job. They got movement. They're really gelling. Coach Strickler is an unbelievable offensive line coach. You know, in my career, I've had the good fortune to be around. And in high school, it's very difficult to find a good offensive line coach. I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of good ones. And Chad Strickler is right up there with any of them. He has done just a tremendous job with this year's group.
Well, awesome, Coach. Congrats, like I said here. How about we show some highlights from the game?
Let's watch them.
Offensive highlights are sponsored by Euro Motorcars of Devon.
Oh, and by the way, these are in order.
Okay, way to go here.
So, the first...
What's this, like, is it supposed to be, or is it give, or is it he's got some option here in this?
No, this is Armonte went the wrong way.
Wrong way, okay,
So,
gotcha.
you see what the offensive line did to open that hole up.
Yeah, it's huge.
So, it didn't really matter. This was the second touchdown. We were trying to get their outside linebacker, who's very aggressive, to come up on the read fake. Usually we're faking away from a play. We're faking to a play.
And
you
he
see
can't get
the
out there
safety
for it.
and the other backer stay inside with Zach High, and B.J. Beer gets a touchdown. This was, again, you talk about the offensive line. This
Look
is
at
on
that
the
hole,
goal line. You'll see from the end zone copy, watch this hole there. Sean Brogan washes a guy. You see Josh Hellauer.
88, yeah.
And Josh Hellauer just moved to tight end this year, but did a great job. We were going real fast, just like these highlights. And Armonte
Sneaks in, yeah.
jumps into the end zone on an inside zone. And then the last one, and maybe probably the biggest one, and I don't
That was
like
a
the
fourth
end of
down
this.
too, right?
I don't like the end of that. Fortunately, it was cut off, but it was a 4th down and 4. And I thought it was the only time we ran that formation. It was the second time we ran that formation. We had run it one time in the first half. I don't know if you picked up on this, but we were running that formation by putting the tight end on the split side or the weak side and bringing the tackle over, so we had Sean and Ryan Colander next to each other.
Going heavy, yep.
There, what we did was we did it more traditionally, brought the tight end over, and were able to generate a slightly different look defensively with the 2 receivers out there that made the outside linebacker walk, who would normally be kind of in that area. And
Huge hole for him to run through right there to the end zone. All right, Coach, great stuff right there. We're going to take a quick break here, all right, though?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll take a quick break here, and we'll recap the defensive highlights from Springford PV. Welcome back to the Gridiron, sponsored by Rothman Orthopedics. I'm your host, John Brown, with the head coach, Chad Brubaker. All right, Coach, here, we usually do announcements here, but I'm going to take an opportunity to do announcements. I just want to thank you and the staff and the kids they picked me as the Teacher of the Week, and you kind of let me, I appreciate that, and I got a little look into the life of Springford football, and I was impressed with the kids. I was impressed with your staff and the things they had to say. It was neat to be a part of. You know, I've coached other things here at Springford, just a different angle, new way of looking at things. I just thank you guys and the kids for that. That was really cool.
That's something new that we've done this year, and it's actually been really great. I think it's good. You had a good chicken parm
Great
meal.
pizza chicken parm, yep.
And I think it's great because you get to sit with the captains, which is a different thing. You know, all of a sudden your guard is down a little bit in terms of instead of the classroom.
We're not in classroom, yeah.
So you're sitting with the kids having like a normal conversation, and then kind of seeing what we do, our rituals and things that we do at dinner. And you didn't get the opportunity; you already had plans. But I think the one thing that's been really interesting that I never counted on was as part of the Teacher of the Week, the teacher chosen gets to eat dinner with us, gets to go through our walkthrough, and gets to be on the sideline with a spouse or kid during the game, child. And the one thing I've noticed, or the people that have been able to go to the games, they're saying, wow, so-and-so player, I see them come off the field, they're in pain, or they're emotional, whatever. They get themselves, they see the trainer tapes it up or throws some dirt on it.
Yeah.
Rub some dirt on it, and they go back in. I never saw that. I didn't think that of that kid.
Right.
He's here's what I get. he's such a nice kid in class.
I didn't think he could be like that out on the field.
Right.
Yeah.
And they also see how fast the game is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're up in the stands, it's a different thing. When you're on the sidelines and the play's coming at you and you have to kind of move out of the way, or somebody, you know, makes a hit or a play, they're like, oh, this is more than I thought it was. So it's been really cool. I think it's something that we're going to continue to do.
I really enjoyed it. It was I was surprised taking how they seemed very relaxed at dinner. You know, they knew what was at the stake, and you know, like I thought it might have been a very quiet conversation, but they talked sports. We didn't talk about the game. We just talked sports, and it was fun. It was very enjoyable, and hearing what you and Coach Mick had to say to the kids, and like I said, I enjoyed it, and I think you should keep it going and get as many teachers involved as you possibly can out there.
Yeah, I think again, it's also valuable for the kids to see you and other teachers in a different way as well. And, I think it's a cool thing.
Also, quick note here: district rankings came up. You guys move up. You're up to 7 now. So I'm gonna guess win this game this week. You're gonna get that first.
Well, we'll get.
You're gonna be in districts, but you get that home game, that first round home game here.
Yeah.
Looks like
if we win, we'll get a home game.
I even saw somebody predict maybe even with the win you move up to 6 too. I'm sure people out there projecting, you know, the whole brackets and stuff.
There's a couple games that are involved that are big games in terms of seeding. Downingtown East plays Coatesville. That's a big one. Souderton plays CB.
South. No, I think
South
North Penn's got
West?
somebody that's in there. North Penn's got another one that's.
And Abington plays somebody too. Maybe Abington plays CB West. I think Abington plays. No, they just played CB West.
But there's a couple games.
There's a couple games, yeah.
So a lot of things can
It gets
change.
confusing.
But that'll all be taken care of Sunday morning. That the bracket will be out for
We didn't
district
get
football.
we didn't get an email yet. We always have a Sunday morning meeting. Didn't get the email yet.
Well, maybe that's coming out here today. You know, so, all right, so let's
Makes
get
for a long day. I like it. I'd rather be invited to the meeting than not invited to the meeting.
And it looks like PV and O&J win this week. They'll make the bracket too in the 6A.
Who does O&J play? Do you know?
Pottstown.
It'll be close. That's going to hurt them in terms of, you know, Pottstown's a 4A team. That will hurt them. So that normally, if we play a 6A team and beat them, we get 140 points. So they'll only get 100 if they beat Pottstown. Now, Pottstown's overall record is what?
I don't know.
5 wins, 6 wins, 5 wins?
I don't think they're there. I think
So-
if it ended today, they'd be the 4th seed in that 4A playoffs, where Pottsgrove is the 1 in the.
So let's just say they had 4 wins, because
Okay.
that'll make it really easy.
Yep.
That means they're playing, O&J's playing a 0-win 6A team. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. What else we say? All right, so we'll move on. We got crossover week here, but before we do that, we talked about the defense, and they had some big stops, and you knew PV was going to score. There too many weapons out there.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Too many weapons, but when they needed it, they got some stops for you out there for you on Friday night.
They did, and you know, one of the things, and I want to talk real briefly about special teams.
Okay.
And recognize a couple people. We've had struggles on our kickoff return throughout the year. We thought they had the ability. We just needed to. So we have 3 sophomores deep, and then actually 4 sophomores deep, because Johnny Pergine's back there. He's not a deep returner, but he's on the team. And we put kids there that we think have ability. It's just a matter of, you know, learning it. So those guys gave us J. Seth Owens, Colton Kashira. They gave us short fields on 2 or 3 drives. Johnny Pergine had a return. They gave us short fields. So PV outgained us by 100 yards, but part of it was because how well our kickoff return team did.
Gotcha.
The other thing that occurred was, and this is so underrated, Joe Brogan made 2 fair catches. All right? They allowed their punts to drop. The difference, now it wasn't huge, like we didn't get a great roll, but a lot of times,
Just catching the ball in high
you're going to
school
save
football.
10 yards.
Yeah.
Minimum. It's like a 10-yard return. Joe Brogan's just done a great job. He's fearless and has done a great job. So those
yeah,
2 in
special teams
particular,
guys
as well as Grant Silliman and Ryan Engro, 2 punts inside the 20.
Yeah.
So-
and we've talked, and this team struggled a little bit in special teams this year.
And we've worked harder at it than I think we ever have. We've changed personnel more than we ever have, and we got to a point where we're just like, hey guys, like if you can't do it, we're like, understand you're gonna get fired. Like you got, and for some kids, for most of the kids, that clicked.
Gotcha. Before we do highlights here, we'll talk about the defense, like we said, defense a little bit. Your defensive ends this year are just getting the job done for you out there, and they've been the staple, really, of this defense.
Right, because they've had to be.
Yeah.
Blake Terrizzi has set a record for most hurries in a season, and hurries are an underrated stat. We had, by the way, set a record on Friday night, 16 hurries in a game. We only had 2 sacks for about 3 yards, but we had a lot of hurries where we got, when we moved the quarterback off of his spot, made him throw under duress. Blake Terrizzi had 6, which is a record-breaking. Zamir McDowell, Tanner Romano, Nate Fritz Robinson, all previously had 5. There was a possible 7th, and I kiboshed it because we try to make sure our stats are right.
Yep.
So ultimately, Ryan Colander doesn't fill up the stat sheet, but he does everything right. And those guys have really carried us.
And you had a defensive score in the game there too. Jason picked 6 too. Like that obviously helps out the cause too for you guys. Turn the momentum too.
We almost had one a few plays prior, but Armonte hit the ground and the ball popped up in the air. That was under duress. And by the way, Blake Terrizzi had a hurry on that play, forcing the quarterback to throw a little high, and Jay Seth made the pick. It was a really huge play in the game because I think it was at that point it was a 7-point game.
Yeah, I think they always kind of got it back to got it back to that one score within, and then you guys just kept making a play like you guys talked about in the thing.
Another huge play was Dante Bonani.
The pass breakup,
pass breakup, and Dante Bonani has played a total of 0.0 defensive snaps in his 3-year high school career. And I just want to, Dante Bonani last year stepped in at quarterback when we
Ryan went in,
yeah, we had a freshman backup, and it was game 1, and we just weren't ready to go. And I look at Dante, and he looks at me like, okay. We approached him, and Ryan Engro actually was scheduled to play some safety, but Dante, talk about selflessness. Dante didn't care about, I'm sure he does deep down, but he knows that the win's a bigger thing. He had 1 catch for 5 yards, and it was kind of a fleeting thing. It wasn't, and he didn't care. He just played football, and in fact, I think he liked it a little bit because, maybe going forward we'll see more of him back there.
Yeah, you never know. And you also saw Scarcelli made a return there for defense.
Yeah, he was the one guy we got back.
Got a corner back there for you.
Got cleared on Thursday, taped it up, put a pad on it, and said, I'm ready to go.
Go play football.
Yep.
All right, let's take a look at the defensive highlights from Spring Forward PV.
Defensive highlights are sponsored by Meshach Physical Therapy.
All right, so this was a great job early. You see, Sean Brogan actually got a hurry on that play and tipped the quarterback, and the ball, you'll see the ball kind of like flip backwards, and that's a 6-yard loss. Great job there by, I think it's Austin Rapp and Mason Brill.
You're only bringing 3, but getting a little pressure.
Got a little pressure, and then sacked by Johnny Pergine and Jay Seth Owens. We forced him up into the pocket. You don't get a hurry on that either. It's just, he just stepped up in the pocket.
It's almost like you got a little spy going on there with action. You're watching the court.
That could have happened. That could have happened. Yep. This was a nice play. Sean Brogan's another guy. We didn't even talk about Sean. Donnie Nicoline was out with in concussion protocol, and Sean Brogan comes in playing both ways, and he had 2 huge plays. That was one of them, a tackle for a loss. And then here it is. Oh, no, it's not. This is the other sack. This is a sack by Brandon Smith. Brandon Smith hasn't played a down of defense all year. He beats a double team. He hustles, and he makes a sack. And so excited for Brandon, who has a lot of potential. And here it is. You see Terrizzi putting the quarterback down, who, by the way, is a really, really good quarterback. And Jay Seth gets down the sideline into the end zone. Got guys are excited to block and celebrating. Like, great job there by Terizzi. All right, and look at the defensive guys. Bonani has a future career as a referee. There, you know,
He's
he
already
predicted.
signaling that it's going to be touchdown.
I did tell him to take some rest on offense. I said, if you're feeling bad, take some rest on offense.
There's the break.
So you can do that. And there was a play on offense where he just puts his hands up and he goes, Coach, you told me to take
a break.
But look at this play that he made. We were in cover 2. You know, the other safety did not do what he needed to do there, and Dante covered it up for him. Dante, by the way, had no business being over there. There's no reason. It reminds me a little bit, all right? You're a little younger than me. Pete Rose.
Yeah, I know who Pete Rose is, yeah.
Bob Boone went to catch a foul ball near the dugout, and Pete Rose had no business being over there. He should have stayed over by first base because there was runners on. Pete Rose comes over, the ball bounces out of Bob Boone's mitt, and Pete Rose is right there. That reminded me, now Pete Rose did that because there was some type of instinct. And that's Dante Bonani. Like, Dante Bonani played, and literally, by the way, Dante has never practiced on the defensive side of the ball in 3 years. He got his first practice on defense on Tuesday.
That week.
Actually, Monday.
Whatever that
of last week. But he just has instincts. He is just a multi-sport athlete that knows and has instincts.
Something's there. I got to get everything. All right, Coach, great stuff right now. All right, we're off PV. Now we got crossover week here, all right?
Yep.
Pope John Paul, Golden Panthers coming here on Friday night. Make sure you stay tuned through the commercial break, and we'll preview the game with PJP. Welcome back to the Gridiron, sponsored by Rothman Orthopedics. I'm your host, John Brennan, with the head coach, Chad Brubaker. Crossover week here. Big schools hosting the small schools, so you get the PAC championship game this week here. Pope John Paul comes calling here. They're undefeated in PAC play. They ran through the small school division. Talk about Pope John Paul a little bit, Coach.
Their student section held a vigil last week.
Really?
At Upper Marion, because they've beaten everybody in the Frontier Division by 25-plus points. I saw that tweet out from their student section. So
I missed that one. Okay.
Now, it was a really close game against Upper Marion. Upper Marion's quarterback unfortunately fumbled on the 1-yard line into the end zone, which would have tied the game, presumably. So it was a tough game last week for them. But anyway, what are we talking about?
Pope John Paul, they're off.
So they're wide open. You know, they go empty a lot of times without a running back. They do some nice things. They throw a lot of bubble screens. They throw a lot of, we call it a snag route. Quarterback runs out of empty. There's a lot of different things that they do.
And it's out of his hands. He's got good hands, gets the ball out, and he's making good decisions.
In shotgun all the time, yes.
Okay, let's take a look at BJP on offense.
Highlights are sponsored by Rental World of Limerick.
Upper Marion is wearing the October pink breast cancer jerseys here. This is just a missed assignment defensively, clearly. You know, and I don't think that there's a fake. I think it's just, you know, there is a play action fake, but the safety just doesn't. There was a safety just not getting any depth on his drop. But a good throw and catch. You see here, right there, actually, I lied. So they were under center there. Nice play, inside zone. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, it's a counter, and the running back cuts it back a little bit inside that.
But you're seeing this 4 receiver look every time, basically from
BJP.
Yeah.
You see,
it's a good throw.
Good throw, and that's a tight end transfer from Daniel Boone. Who actually has a scholarship offer and committed to Bowling Green. You see, they get him off his spot. Yeah, they get him off his spot, the quarterback off his spot, and he can throw very well on the run. Nice job. Here they are empty. They do, run a lot of this motion. This is a play they like, where they are, trying to get the ball quickly and block. And Kid does a nice job of.
It's what you say, I mean, it's like it's
It's
not
a
the way
bubble.
their run game too. Like it's the way they get their
exactly.
run game going. Yeah.
But the kid does a nice job of bouncing off the block.
Makes some guys miss some tackles. Yep.
And then again, that's just
You kind of
really
take
a
away the bubble, the
misassignment.
early stuff, then they have the deep
Right,
stuff there.
exactly. But primarily a misassignment there. You got to be aware, and you did see the safety take 2 steps up, and then whoops,
See you the other way.
too late to recover.
All right, what are you going to see defensively from PJP?
Well, they want to keep guys in the box, and so whether that means 4-4, 4-3, 5-2, sometimes 5-3, even you're going to see as many guys in the box as possible. So from that standpoint, that means our receivers are going to be in a lot of open space situations. The strength of their defense is probably they have some good personnel at every level of their defense. So I think it's one of those things we're gonna have to win the box.
And this is how many years in a row now we're playing them in this is 3 years in a row we're playing them in the crossover?
I think so.
3 years row in the
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at PJP here on defense.
Highlights are sponsored by Rental World of Limerick.
Upper Marion actually did a really nice job of running the ball, but they did get in a couple situations where they had some negative plays and it really hurt them. They tried to get on the perimeter a little bit in the last 2 plays and struggled to do that.
Nothing going.
And they ran the ball down pretty well. Ultimately, you can see there they have 6, 7 in the box, and no one blocks a dude. That's gonna make it tough, But here they are again.
Like you said, a lot of guys in the box there.
Yeah, and they can't block them enough. I don't know why that receiver stopped. I don't know if a whistle blew on that play. I couldn't really tell, but you see the receiver kind of stops.
Right
Here,
yeah.
What's going on?
That seems like a quick whistle. That's a quick whistle. Yeah.
It would have been a quick whistle, but so there you see 7 in the box. The safety kind of sneaking down in as well.
They try and pull
and nothing doing. It's hard to block 7 guys in the box. So, and this is just a pick. This is close to the end of the game when Upper Marion's trying to come back. And they just sat on it and made the interception.
All right, Coach. Like we said, we started that show with what a huge win, excitement here, and it's going to keep rolling here for you guys. There's no let up here. You want to bring home that PAC championship?
Yeah, we're doing. Just so you know,
what do you got?
Yeah, so we're doing a student section appreciation where you can buy your ticket and you get a half-price shirt.
Okay.
Okay, because we just want these kids to come out and have a great time. I think there's a tweet out there, something about the Battle of Royersford. I don't know about all that, but we'll do our best.
You'll show up Friday night and play some football.
We'll try to do our
They'll
best.
take that long bus ride up.
Yeah, right.
Township Line Road to get over there.
Yeah.
All right, Coach. Well, best of luck to you and the crew
All right.
on Friday night.
All right.
Make sure you tune in next week as we recap the game with Pope John Paul and preview the District 1 tournament. For head coach Chad Brubaker, I'm John Brennan. See you next time on the Gridiron.